I do love the idea of
Right.
Thrawn. Let's say he comes to destroy us right now, and he's like, I gotta study their art, and just looks at memes for hours, and he's like, oh no, they're stupid.
Hello there. You found the Lost Holocron, an ancient artifact of lore and legends from a galaxy far, far away. Each episode of the Lost Holocron, you will join an episodic discussion of media from the Star Wars universe. We will be your guides. I'm Tim, and today I'm joined by Kyle.
Hello.
Scott.
Hello.
And Stuart.
Hello.
This time we're starting a new book. Stuart, what are we reading right now?
We are reading Heir to the Empire. It's a Legends novel written by Timothy Zahn. It's the first installment of the Thrawn trilogy, which was first published in 1991. The novel is set 9 years after the Battle of Yavin, 5 years after the Return of the Jedi. It features the cast of the original trilogy and introduces the trilogy's eponymous villain, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Quite a mouthful, huh?
Yeah, very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Blah, blah.
By the way, thank you for using the word eponymous and not titular, because that's just a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
You see it everywhere in film reviews. Yeah. So today we read chapter 1. And Scott, would you mind summarizing that for us?
So chapter 1, 5 years after the Battle of Endor, aboard the Imperial Star Destroyer Chimaera, Captain Pallaeon reminisces about a decline of the Empire. A raiding mission to retrieve data from the border system of Obroa Sky brings pursuers, and Pallaeon gets to see Grand Admiral Thrawn demonstrate his tactical superiority. Thrawn savors his progress in the only puzzle worth solving, the complete, total, and utter destruction of the rebellion.
But isn't the rebellion done by now? Like, aren't they the New Republic?
I feel like he's not gonna accept that the rebellion has won at this point. In
Right.
his mind, it's not over because he's still there.
Right, to Thrawn, I mean, they're still kind of like a nuisance.
It's very clear that Thrawn either doesn't accept the destruction of the Empire, and he doesn't take the legitimacy of the rebellion seriously, or the New Republic seriously. Because it's very clear, it's mentioned 5 times in this chapter that he is calling it the rebellion, compared to everybody else is moving on saying, oh, it's the New Republic this, the New Republic that.
He seems like a pretty arrogant guy to me, despite his intelligence, which is pretty interesting about him. I particularly like how his tactic to get rid of that one fleet is basically to weaponize bigotry against species.
Well, yeah, in a way, but I really loved his line, me being an artist as well, he's like, if you understand that species art, you understand that species. So that I thought was really cool. That
was an interesting scene when he was explaining that to Pallaeon. As I mentioned, I did feel like it was kind of a little weird and bigoted, but if that's his character, that's his character.
Yeah, I mean, he is the bad guy. Like, he's not the good person in this story. I'm very excited to read more about this because I've only seen Thrawn in the Rebels series, and he is described as intelligent in that, but he is the most intelligent person in the kids' cartoon. So, like, there's a bit like
that's fair.
I feel like they modeled him in Rebels. I feel like they modeled him pretty well after these books. I mean, I've only read the first book, but of this trilogy. But I feel like from what I've seen in Rebels, it reflects the book reasonably well from his character.
Yeah, I straight up heard Lars Mikkelsen's voice while I was reading whenever Thrawn spoke.
Yeah. There's such a good connect between those two representations that I wonder if in Rebels they had Timothy Zahn as some sort of what's the right
maybe
word?
Like a consultant or something.
Yeah, consultant. I wonder if they had him consult on any of the episodes for the writing of the Thrawn character himself, because he did write a new trilogy.
I'm curious about that too.
He did, yes.
In the current canon.
Yeah, he's written a lot of new stuff recently. Yeah.
He is a very good writer, and I particularly enjoy how Thrawn is not the point of view character. And I think that is a very good, a very good decision, because we're not inside a character's head going, "Oh yeah, I'm the greatest." We're somebody else who is looking up to this black box, and it's just pouring with danger. Like, his skin is literally blue, like the frogs in the forest. And red eyes. I'm pretty sure there are red-eyed, blue-skinned frogs in the forest that you are not supposed to lick.
So we're not supposed to lick Grand Admiral Thrawn then.
I think that he will be very dangerous.
What is Thrawn's race?
Chiss.
That might come in later in the book, but yeah, the species is called a Chiss.
Yes. Blue-skinned, red-eyed, black-haired people.
Yeah, it's very interesting to note that he actually ascended his, not only did he ascend so high in the Empire, but I think they said something like he was the first and only non-human to ascend so high in the Empire. Probably one of the only non-humans to serve in the Empire, because I know Palpatine had a pretty strict human-only policy.
Yeah, that is true.
That is interesting. In a way, that probably also limits the heights that he can reach. And one thing I do like about Rebels is that I think it's interesting to show him in the height of the Empire, because due to how Palpatine feels about non-human species, I think it's cool to see this extremely talented tactical genius who does have a great amount of power but is limited in what he could achieve. And that probably was a factor in this, because in the book it mentions, Pallaeon specifically mentions that he thinks if Thrawn were in charge at the Battle of Endor, that the Empire probably could have won. And
yeah, I remember that.
So even in this, that probably was a factor.
Yeah.
And now that the Empire is kind of in shambles and there's just remnant cells, he basically has the opportunity he didn't have before to take command.
Yeah, and they kind of need the talent where they can get it at this point, and then Thrawn is such a massive talent. It would be stupid not to have him, have him lead.
Yeah, there's just such regret in Pallaeon's voice as he's describing how young and inexperienced everybody is, and the extreme loss that went at the Battle of Endor, that so much like military experience had just wiped out at that point.
Especially on, they mentioned, on the Executor, like the loss of the Executor was not just the loss of the ship, but it was loss of all the talent that was on that ship.
What I thought was interesting was that Pallaeon assumed that Vader was in charge at that point, but we know that Vader was on the Death Star.
Oh.
So would the battle have gone differently if Vader was actually in command of the Executor at the time?
So basically, if anyone else had been in charge at the Battle of Endor, the Empire probably would have won.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. Well, later in the book, they do kind of mention...
Hold on, this book?
I know you were very excited and read this book early.
But there is a very distinct, controlling aspect that's mentioned, that the Emperor is trying to bring all the political power in under himself, and he's trying to bring all the military power under himself, and this kind of arrogance that came from the Emperor and obviously Vader as well. They were on the Death Star too as the battle was going on, and they just kind of left military command to whatever means that they had on the outside. And Pallaeon even reflecting on that and going if Thrawn was on there, we would have done a lot better. But unfortunately, he thought that Vader was in command, which he wasn't. He was basically absent. What do they call it? Missing in action, or
MIA?
Absent without leave.
Yeah, AWOL.
AWOL. Well, almost.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Yeah, it's Thrawn obviously is highly intelligent, but it's just there is only so much you can do with a heavily crippled army.
Yeah, for sure.
They're called remnants for a reason. Yeah.
Right, exactly. He seems a little lofty I feel like he thinks he could just defeat anyone, but I feel like he's highly limited in what he can do right now. I assume that's going to change at some point.
Yeah, I wonder about that as well. He does seem very confident, but I'm wondering if he is too removed from the actual runnings of the runnings of the operation, that you can have the best tactical mind in the galaxy, but if you're running with inexperience and lack of resources, that's not really going to get you very far. It's also interesting in this chapter how Thrawn is described, because we're introduced to him as meditating, and I know from his reputation precedes him a lot in our universe, but he's been meditating, and it's not clear yet that he is not a Sith.
Oh, that's a good point. Very good point.
Because just like the Emperor and Vader being kind of distant military minds, we get this image of Thrawn, and he's also being described in he's a very alien on his otherwise human frame. So there's this kind of weird disconnect. It's not describing him as human, but it's a human-like frame. And
right,
just that esoteric description is very unsettling, particularly for Pallaeon, Captain Pallaeon, who's also not used to alien creatures. And then we get introduced to the bodyguard as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Rook.
Yeah.
Rook.
Yeah.
Rook the Nogri.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Scott, you remember that one Jedi Academy mission?
Yes, that's exactly
the
first place
where
I
we fight Nogri.
Yep. They were Darth Vader's personal bodyguards, according to that level of the game. But yeah, according to that
Were
mission.
they really?
Yeah, they were supposed to be his personal bodyguards.
I thought they were just like a random alien species on that planet you went on.
No. Yeah, it even says on that mission they're supposed to be his personal bodyguards. That was actually a pretty cool mission.
I shouldn't have speed run that game so much.
Yeah. I was too busy using the cheat codes to make 10,000 Jedi and then have crash the game and stuff.
I am curious because they do emphasize on how young the crew is. How young are we talking here? Do you think they're all in their early 20s, or oh, that's a young lieutenant, he's 43?
No,
I think probably 20s.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
I think early 30s at the latest would probably considered
maybe
unexperienced.
They got freshly recruited out of high school.
Probably with a few years under their, maybe having recently just recently promoted to their positions. Served a few years, because at this point they're probably not straight out of the academy, because the academy is probably not really functioning at this point.
Yeah, this was this chapter seemed particularly short.
It did, yeah.
I felt like it covered quite a lot of good ground, though. We get a nice introduction to our antagonists here, and we get 4 named characters. There's Rook the bodyguard, we've got Captain Pallaeon, we have Thrawn, and we've also got what's the guy's name? Chus?
Lieutenant,
Tichel?
I forgot.
Tichel?
Yeah, Tichel.
Yeah, Lieutenant Shell. And so each of them represents something, right? We've got the inexperience being represented by Chus, and he commits many faux pas over the course of the chapter. He yells across the bridge.
Oh yeah, he
does. And he comms into Thrawn's meditation chamber, which Pallaeon has said not to be doing, or he didn't say not to do it, but he did think about there's nothing more that we look down upon if yelling across the bridge than in disturbing the Grand Admiral. And then we have our point of view character. We've got Pallaeon, who represents this kind of struggle between the past and the future. And then we've got Thrawn, who is very clearly the brilliant mind leading the future kind of character. And then we've also got Rook, which is a
highly skilled assassin type, more physical attributes. He's the strength dex character.
And so any other mention to other characters, we have an unnamed lieutenant that Pallaeon interacts with, and Thrawn gets messages from the bridge, which is all they describe it as. And there's not a lot of like verbal garbage or character noise going on, whereas something that I'm really annoyed with by the High Republic series is that there are 7 characters per chapter that you have to remember. And by the time I get to the end of the chapter, I'm confused about, is this character the Jedi, or are they the apprentice, or is that somebody who has just kind of like walked into the scene and then walked out of the scene? And there's just so much noise going on in the High Republic novels, whereas this is very clear. We have 3 main characters in this scene. We have references to Darth Vader and the Emperor, who we are familiar with, and then that's it. There's no confusion about who is representing what in this scene.
You're right. It's very efficient. Very clear. And each character is specifically showing off, I guess, a different theme of the chapter, as you can say. I mean, you broke it down earlier. But one thing that also occurred to me is how interesting it is that Thrawn's meditation chamber turns into his command center, because I think it shows how intertwined his eccentric interests are with his strategy.
Yeah, it's almost more intimidating, especially from like Pallaeon's point of view, because it's like you have this military mastermind surrounded by art, and Pallaeon doesn't really appreciate the value of it at the time, but then like when he's in Thrawn's chamber, he's almost scared. He's like, whoa.
Especially when Thrawn's mansplaining it.
Right. And Pallaeon's pretending to understand. He's like, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I get it, yeah.
We've all been that person around, like that friend who's really into something.
And Thrawn clearly knows Thrawn clearly knows he's lying to him. It's like, oh yeah, I understand. Yeah, Thrawn can see right through you.
And then a snap of his fingers, it just changes from an art museum into this tactical layout.
Yes, I thought that was so cool. Yeah,
very cool.
There was a line in here that I really enjoyed. It was after T'Chell finished reporting to Hell that what was going on. T'Chell was described as spinning around with a reasonably good imitation of a proper military turn. It kind of feels like they're role playing at this point.
That was a good description.
It feels like. I do understand they're young, but it sounds like they're just role playing as soldiers in
it's a crew of interns
of nowhere,
right?
And like even on that first page, Pallaeon's description was, with all the regal weight of 50 years spent in the Imperial fleet gave the man, he straightened up and turned around. Like there is very clear distinction between what he is and what he sees that he's working with. With the military,
he's working with a bunch of monkeys.
And I don't think they're leaving this. They're stuck where they are. They're not getting off and exploring places. I doubt. Not stuck, like trapped, but like it's not like they're going to planets and being like, oh, time to stretch my legs. They're running.
No shore leave.
Yeah. Is the Chimaera just a standard Star Destroyer? Do we know what class it is at this point? At this chapter?
It has not been clarified, no. Just that it is an Imperial Star Destroyer, no class.
Okay.
I would imagine that they not working with a lot of resources, so it could be a standard.
Yeah, so, right. So, one simple Star Destroyer might, during the height of the Empire, might be much more significant at this point in the Empire. Yeah, because, like you said, Kyle, they're probably not, going around making, house calls to places, but...
Yeah. Definitely.
I mean, there was the former commander's luxury entertainment suite, which got reformed into the Thrawn's tactical. Would there have been a luxury suite on a standard Star Destroyer?
his secondary
I remember
brain.
that mention. Yeah.
They need a holodeck.
They got a couple of Twi'leks entertaining them.
Glad they get an opportunity to unwind.
No.
No holidays when you need to enforce order. I really love this setting though, and I'm really glad that the canon has been reinterpreting elements of it. I like how there's almost a role reversal, specifically with like the Empire being a smaller force going against the grain, but then at the same time, the New Republic is still getting on its feet, so it's not the same might that the Empire was. So it's not a true role reversal, but it's a bit of one, and I've always really, really enjoyed that setting and concept. I'm really, really glad it's making its way into canon.
I didn't really realize it until while I was watching Rebels, because I watched Rebels before I read this book. But I'm really glad with the way that they did Thrawn in Rebels. Yeah.
They definitely paid a lot of good respect to the construction of this character, and it's clear why he's been a favorite character just from this first chapter. If you read nothing more,
clearly
he does leave an extreme impression.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, I love his line where he's like, "If you understand the species art, you understand the species," because that's so profound, and that's something that only a tactical genius would really understand. I mean, not only, but it definitely helps. It definitely helps.
I think there's always a possibility that a species will gain a different perspective.
Yeah.
But I feel like we really need more detail about the specific maneuver and the species to understand what's going on. Because is he taking advantage of some kind of physical attribute of theirs, like they don't have as good a peripheral vision as humans or something like that? Or is it a cultural perspective? And if that's the case, then if a species joined the rebellion, wouldn't they broaden their perspective? So that's a part that I kind of don't fully buy.
Well, yeah, but he only knew it was this specific species because of by the architecture of their ships or whatever, and so he was able to take advantage of him from that. He was able to take advantage of maybe some kind of biological limitation or whatever that they might have had. I don't know, because I can't remember the name of the species, and I haven't done the research on to see how the species' biological attributes might be.
Yeah.
So but Thrawn clearly understands them. He clearly knows any kind of if they have poor eyesight or whatever, it's like he clearly knows, or if they're easily intimidated or something. Yes.
I mean, he understands them on a general level, but my issue is that he might not understand them on a personal level. And so as strong of a character as Thrawn is, and as brilliant as I can see he is, I don't fully buy this tactic, and it feels very, very 90s to me, which is appropriate, I guess. But, yeah,
that's a good point. And the other thing is we don't know enough about this maneuver that Thrawn had executed such and such maneuver.
He said that they were psychologically incapable.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So Thrawn is incredibly bigoted.
Yeah.
He is, but it seems like you said, it's very 90s and very homogenous of a culture that, like, you can see a culture or see an entire species, a link between their psychology just from their art. And I think that, if you look at human art, even in like the Renaissance, you would see many different styles of art. Not just like the dominant art style at the time, but then you go to China, and the art would be completely different. And so you couldn't just like look at 16th century art and go, yes, humans think like this, and then find that common link between like Chinese and South American and European, all this like different art at the same time.
Right, yeah. It's true, because there would definitely be different cultures as well.
Yeah. But apparently everybody loved to build pyramids.
You like the idea?
Kind of agree with the idea that the art reflects life, and life reflects art in different ways, and you can see the influence of history on how art has progressed. And so there's like an element of truth here, but it doesn't
definitely
follow through to the degree that this happens. Like, it makes very good for a fantasy space opera setting, but
a 90s space fantasy opera.
In the 90s.
In the 90s. We have different standards now.
Yeah.
I do love the idea of
Right.
Thrawn. Let's say he comes to destroy us right now, and he's like, I gotta study their art, and just looks at memes for hours, and he's like, oh no, they're stupid.
Thrawn's the one data mining everyone to understand their psychology.
Right.
They clearly
He's
worship
like-
dogs.
He's going to be like, go after the cats first, because apparently they love cats.
can Thrawn have cheeseburger?
When he says he studies their art, I do wonder if it's only paintings or if, like, everything, music.
Probably art as a
Probably,
whole.
yeah.
Because I would imagine, well, because in Rebels he had,
Yeah.
he had the little talisman thing
Right.
from
Ryloth.
Syndulla, Heir Syndulla's
family.
family. Yeah.
And if we're to assume that Timothy Zahn had some consultation on that, then that
Mhm.
basically is a confirmation.
Yeah.
We also have him enjoying a strong Frovish ale, and
Yeah.
I wonder if his indulgence in alcohol at this point is an extension of his cultural appreciation, or cultural, maybe appreciation is not the right word. His cultural studies include
Studies, that's
the,
good.
Studies
the
is
food
good, yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
I think it would, yeah. Because he seems like he's very interested in multiple cultures. So yeah, I think he would probably indulge in any form.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see this continue throughout the book.
Probably.
I'm sure we will.
I think so.
Every chapter he's making a different kind of drink.
Yeah.
In this chapter, it's a Frovish ale, and then a Carillion cocktail.
Yeah.
The next one, and then later in the book, he's just got this big curly straw out of an empty glass.
He's
got a big gulp.
He's gonna be ready to fight Luke.
Chesla, bring me another drink.
He's gonna get ready to fight Luke, and he's like, I gotta drink some hot chocolate.
God. That's a conversation for chapter 2.
Yeah, that's a chapter 2. Yeah. I really do wonder what Thrawn would say about humans in Star Wars.
Probably would not be impressed.
You mean like Star Wars humans or Earth humans?
Star Wars humans.
Yeah. He would
try to break them down by planet, though, right?
Oh,
Yeah,
true. He
'cause
would.
there's definitely-
Right. There's lots of humans.
Corellian art and Alderaanian art and
Mm-hmm.
Coruscanti art will all be different.
Yeah.
I wonder if that ends up being an advantage for a character like Luke, who is kind of from nowhere.
Possibly. He's kind of neutral in the art.
Do you think that Luke grew up with much art?
I doubt it. I mean, his sense of architecture is pretty much only what he would see, Mos Eisley and nearby places. Tachi Station, I guess. I don't know.
What if colors other than sand are very, very vibrant to Luke?
Oh.
Like, really overwhelming.
Like, his green lightsaber is, like, completely blinding to him. Like, he can't even get it.
Oh, that's such an interesting thought.
That
I'm
is.
really curious about that.
Yeah.
It could either be that they are really vibrant to him, or because he grew up in such a way that his brain isn't sensitive to other colors. So maybe he doesn't perceive colors particularly well either. So I could see
Like
going
a
either
dog.
way.
He has, like, dog vision. He sees
No,
it
not
like
like that.
sepia. He sees it like sepia because he lives in sand.
Well, he'd be able to see blues and purples
No,
from
I
the
know.
sunset.
I know. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's true.
It'd be mute, but his brain just might be more sensitive to shadows and light.
That would be so interesting.
His eyes have to have some damage just from the sand constantly. Like, I wonder.
Well, it's rough and it's coarse and it does get everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm curious,
Right? Like living in snow, you have to wear sunglasses when you're in the snow. Yeah.
There has to be some sort of effect on, like, sun on sand. I don't know if you guys know the term snowblind.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
snowblindness. Yep.
Well, if anyone doesn't know, snowblind is the sun will reflect off the snow, so even if you're not looking directly at the sun, it will blind you and burn your retinas. So I mean, I imagine there's some sort of similar effect.
I would imagine so. Yeah, on the sand. Yeah, absolutely.
I have in some Star Wars media seen people use goggles as they're going around Tatooine. Like in Return of the Jedi, there was a deleted sandstorm scene where they are walking around with like goggles on. Although that's specifically for a sandstorm. Tusken Raiders, they probably have incredible vision on Tatooine.
Yeah. How draconian do you think that his uncle was, though? Maybe he wasn't allowed to go out very far. Didn't want him interacting with Ben Kenobi. Didn't want him playing with his friends.
Didn't want him going to Tachi Station.
No wonder Luke was so whiny.
I mean, Tatooine sucks. It can't be fun going up in Tatooine.
Right.
I really do love observing Tatooine, especially since it's gotten so much development into different subcultures on there. But yeah, it would suck living there. Cool. Any final thoughts on this chapter, guys?
I feel like it was relatively short, but it was important, and it did it was pretty good for introducing specific characters like Pallaeon and Thrawn in particular. Yeah, but, I feel like we do get a pretty decent.
Yeah, and I'd just like to reiterate how much of a master Zahn is of his craft. It's very clear that he knows what he's doing when he sets a scene. The way that he describes things, he doesn't mince words, he doesn't waste time, and he repeats things just enough for you to get the good or get the idea. Like, he wants you to pick up on certain things, so he will repeat it in certain ways, but never the same way. And something I found with other writers is that they will use similar phrasing or like even the same words themselves. But Zahn, he will repeat ideas in new phrasing, in new ways that emphasizes the importance of these things, and you don't get bored with, oh yeah, this thing happened again.
Yeah, I will say, having read the entire first book, I really do enjoy his writing. Yeah. He writes a very thrilling and very easily to, it's easy to read, or in my case, listen to on Audible. But it goes by quick, and it's very thorough though.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
And his punctuation is incredible. I admire the Oxford comma.
I'm a huge Oxford comma fan. I love it.
I'm a huge Oxford comma fan.
It's the best.
Yeah.
This was a very impactful book on me when I was young, and I think that my writing style and my use of punctuation also comes from seeing this and wanting to emulate the pauses or the emphasis that I feel that, if you put your air quotes in there, correct use of punctuation brings to a bit of fiction.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For one, am incredibly excited that we chose this as our first book.
Same.
Yeah,
I agree. It's such an iconic
Has anybody else
series,
read this before?
And it's very definitive. I was familiar with it, but I hadn't actually read it prior to this. Yeah,
it's my first time.
This is my first Legends book.
Ooh.
It's not my first Legends book. Ooh, it's not
this
my first
was my first
Legends
Legends book when I was a kid, and I'm very glad that we are revisiting this. It's very nostalgic.
Nice. Yeah, I hope we can get to my first Legends book at some point in this podcast.
I'm sure we will.
Not sure what. I can't exactly remember where it fits into the timeline. Oh, it actually fits.
Which one's that one?
I think it fits prior to this in the timeline, if I remember correctly. I'll have to revisit the courtship of Princess Leia.
Yeah, I think
because I don't think her and Han were married
the year
at that
after Endor. Yeah,
Return of the Jedi. Yeah, because they were still kind of like sort of dating at that point, because she was kind of being courted by. Well, we'll talk about it later when we get there, but yeah. Yeah.
We'll put it on the list.
Yeah. I hope we do. It's a good book. That was the first one I had ever read in Legends, and I really enjoyed it. And it's still, has a pretty big impact on me as far as, like the specific characters in the universe.
I am incredibly excited for us to keep going through this. Thank you guys for the wonderful discussion, and thank you, our listeners, for joining in. This has been The Lost Holocron. You can find transcripts, links to discussions, and more at our website, we're going 90s styles with it, lostholocron.com. While you're there, you can learn how to support the creation of future episodes. If you read on, we will be waiting for you in the next transmission. We would be honored if you would join us.